Chapter 16 The Trust, Part 1. Anatami couldn't remember the last time she had listened to so much music in so little time. She was hunched over a table in one of the darker corners of yet another of the many sailor bars that littered the edges of Straterra, letting the shadows work with a loose-fitting cloak to hide the distinctive tufts of her ears. Her eyes lingered over the rowdy patrons as they let themselves loose after weeks or months aboard tight-run merchant ships. She'd lost track of those two gifted mares while recovering from her injuries, and she was determined to find them again. How many of these raucous holes had she visited in the last few days? They were so alike. They were all starting to run together. They all had the same hearty fireplace, the same laughing crowd, the same smiling bartender, and the same not quite clean mugs. They also all shared the same corner stage, but the bands that occupied them were as varied as the ships drifting above the city streets. She had heard swing, jazz, rock, blues, and every shade in between. Some of the bands were quite good, belting out rhythms that spoke to her body in some primal way that inspired her to bob her head or tap a hoof. Others, not so much. But Anna wasn't touring the bars of Straterra in search of musical treats. She looked down at the mug of mango cider nestled between her hooves. Someone had scratched something into the stone tabletop, but it was too faded for her to make out in any detail. She raised the mug to her lips and took a sip, letting herself enjoy the tangy bite of the drink, even as her ears parsed the sailor gossip around her. Word is, there's a hiring spree down in Sky Shoals. Don't work any ships headed to trade with us. No, the Barons are clashing with the Free City again.
Did you hear another island fell just a few days ago? Yes, that's where all the refugees came from. Sad business, that.
My boss took on a few passengers yesterday. Doesn't usually do that, but they looked like money, and one of them was the most gorgeous mare you've ever laid eyes on. Anna's ear twitched.
Well, how about that?
She'd paid good bits to buy good ears around the island, listening for just such a mention. She hadn't expected to be the one to actually make the score.
Guess I won't have to find some bits to pay the finder's fee after all.
Her eyes traced a lazy trail around the room, stopping on a squad of sailors chattering over their drinks and a small stakes game of dice. Only one of them seemed to be paying the dice any great attention, his shouts of excitement louder than the others with every roll. The rest were focused more on their conversation, paying the game just enough mind to play with their wallets and spirits alike. You should have seen her, friend, one stallion was saying. Code as white as a marshmallow and the hardest working mane on the island.
What did she call it?
A mare asked, throwing some bits into the pile at the center of the table.
Coffee? Coiffeur,
said a second mare.
Are you sure?
The first mare asked. She chuckled.
That doesn't sound like a word to me.
What would you know about manes, eh? The first stallion said. The dice rattled within the cup he held in his hooves. You ain't touched your mane in months. There was a round of laughter at the table, followed by some good-natured threats and a raising of voices as the dice were thrown. Anna smirked, taking a deeper gulp of her drink. That was Countess Rarity for sure. Now she just had to wait for the crew to head back to their ship and find her own way aboard. Batty? Is that you? Anna suppressed a curse. She looked over to see a pair of thick-bodied earth ponies approaching the table with wide grins. They weren't very friendly grins. I'll be damned! It is you! The front stallion said. He turned to his comrade, nudging him with an elbow. You ever seen a moon curse, kid? Hey, pull that hood down, show him your ears. Anna rolled her eyes, looking away and leaning back into her seat.
I'm not in the mood for your crap, Kick.
Kick landed heavily on the opposite seat from her, his hardened vest clanking against the stone. You're never in the mood. What are you doing in Straterra, anyways? I didn't see the screech anywhere when we came in.
I'm on vacation,
Anna said. She waved a hoof at the band.
sampling the local jazz.
Kick laughed as if she had just told him some outrageously clever joke. I never took you for a record junkie, Bats. He turned, scanning the room. Say, where's that old bird of yours? It's been too long since we shared a drink.
You know how she is, Kick,
Anna said. She smiled, showing her predator teeth.
She doesn't like eating anything that won't run from her.
The other stallion cringed, moving to put his back to the wall. Kick chuckled at his companion's discomfort. Don't worry, kid, he said. Gava won't eat you unless you give her a good excuse. He waved down a serving mare, dipping his head as he pulled a mug of cider from her tray.
I hope you're not getting too comfortable,
Anna said, grimacing as he drank deep from the mug and slammed it down onto the table.
The music was just getting good, and I'd hate to have to go find another bar.
What, I can't sit and talk business with a work friend for a few minutes? Kick asked. He grinned at her, and she glowered back. The other stallion shifted his weight from one side to the other. Anna stole a quick glance at the sailor crew she'd spotted earlier. They didn't look like they'd be leaving anytime soon.
A few minutes, then,
she relented. Ah, that's the spirit. Kick raised his mug and toast, wisely not waiting for her to respond in kind before bringing it to his lips. He let out a content sigh as he came up for air. Ah. How's work then, eh?
It's working.
Kick arched a brow. 2 words? That's all I get? Again, Anna rolled her eyes.
If I had a job, Kick, I wouldn't tell you about it anyways. We're competitors.
Bah, there's plenty of work to go around, you crazy bat. He pulled out a folded paper, slapping it down on the table. Here, check this out. You hear about those gifted over in Highton?
Oh, Buck.
Anna let her eyes fall to the paper as it unfolded, revealing the image of a pretty unicorn mare with a swirling mane. The picture was done in shades of gray, but small text beneath it detailed the mare's description. White coat, purple mane, blue eyes, gifted, cutie mark unknown, extreme magical adept, Countess Rarity, wanted alive. Approach with care.
Who hasn't?
She said, pulling her gaze from the paper with the practiced nonchalance of an experienced liar.
You getting caught up in that clusterbuck?
Everyone who's anyone is. Kick smirked, folding the paper back up and sticking it into his vest. That's good money, Bats. To be frank, I'm surprised you and your bird haven't already snatched one up. Anna shrugged.
There's a certain charm to working without having 100 hungry hunters breathing down your neck.
She stirred a fork in her drink, watching the liquid swirl about. Hey, I won't complain if you're sitting out, Kick said. I'd hate to draw your bird's ire. It'd be worth it, but it'd be damn inconvenient. They sat in silence for several seconds. Anna sipped at her drink. Kick's smile began to falter as his companion's fidgeting became more frequent. All right, I can take a hint. Kick finished his drink, leaving the empty mug on the table as he stood. Say hi to your bird for me, eh? Hope you don't mind covering the drink. Anna gave a shallow nod but said nothing. They both knew that she had a habit of procuring bits out of thin air. Kick would probably check his coin purse as soon as he was out of sight, despite her hooves being on the table throughout the whole conversation. She enjoyed the reputation. She liked the way the ponies carried themselves around her, as if she were some mastermind with an extra set of invisible hooves. Most of her did, at least. Kick beckoned to his friend, and the two of them stepped away. She followed them with her eyes as they settled in at another table with 4 other earth ponies, each one sporting the same thick bodies and hardened barding. She would have to be more careful. If they figured out that she was following a mark, they would no doubt take a closer look. and if they discovered that she had the same target as them, then things could very swiftly become inconvenient. The sailors she had overheard were still chatting over their dice. It would be too obvious if she waited to follow them up into the street, so she finished her drink and stood up. She licked her lips, pulling out a few bits and leaving them on the table. She sighed as she stepped out into the street, stretching out cramped legs as the wind toyed with her mane. She spread her wings and took to the sky in search of a warm breeze to carry her weight for a while. Those sailors would finish drinking eventually. She'd be ready to follow them home.
Twilight!
Twilight, help!
The voices of her parents echoed at her from the darkness. Twilight turned in a circle, wide eyes failing to pierce the black veil that surrounded her.
Where are you?
She called.
Please, I don't see where you are! Over here! Twilight!
Apple Bloom's voice came to her as if from a great distance. The faint cries of Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle mixed together beneath it.
I'm coming!
Twilight splashed through the water around her hooves as she sprinted towards the voice. Was she even moving? She didn't feel any wind on her face, and their voices weren't getting any louder.
Hang on!
The water rose higher around her legs. She found herself grunting as she pushed through a thick sludge that tugged at her chest fur. Looking down, she saw the eyes of her reflection framed in weeping red stains. Her reflection bared its teeth at her.
Hello? Twilight? Hey, Twi! Well, they really weren't kidding.
Twilight started as she woke up. She blinked the image of her own grinning face away as she pulled her head off the smooth paper pillow she'd been resting on. Star Trails snickered at her from behind a hoof.
Stars. AJ said you'd have a funny look on your face, but I didn't think it'd be a gem like that.
Twilight shook herself, rubbing at her eyes with a hoof. She felt her cheeks warming as the snicker escalated into a barely contained chuckle.
What do you want?
Trails let out a breath, finally calming down.
We're all having a little party over in the galley. I thought I'd come over and invite you. Your friends all said you'd be sleeping on a book, but I kind of thought it was just a joke.
Twilight blinked. She looked down at her pillow, realizing that it was actually a heavy book splayed out on the floor in front of her. She grimaced at the spot where her drool had stained the paper, distorting the small print. She was quick to remove the stain with a flick of well-known magic.
A party? What for? Oh, nothing,
Trail said.
Just, sending Gava limping off with a bunch of holes in her ship and a bigger one in her pride, finding a long-dead Alicord princess, baking some fudge brownies. No reason.
She smirked down at Twilight.
I don't feel like partying,
Twilight said. She flipped the book closed, checking the title. A Comprehensive History of the Empty Thrones.
I have work to do.
She went to open it again, only to have Trails press down on the cover with a hoof.
So we all keep hearing,
she said.
Come on, Twilight, just come hang out for a few minutes. Would that really be so bad? I might not come back here much, but you've got your nose in a different book every time I do. At least come eat something.
Twilight's stomach rumbled at the mention of food. She frowned, looking to her side. She was in the cargo hold, with a mess of books and notes scattered around her right side, and the sleeping form of Princess Luna curled up on a mattress to her left. She couldn't even remember what she had been doing when she fell asleep. She sighed, standing up. Her bones had begun to ache from lack of activity. If she took some time to eat something, her train of thought would probably come back to her.
Fine. But only for a little bit. This is important research.
Trails grinned,
Sweet! Come on.
She turned, beckoning with a sweep of her tail as she started for the door to the hall.
Say, I was meaning to ask your friends, but never got around to it. Did they have brownies in your time?
Anna watched from above, taking careful note of the ponies milling about the deck of the lucky coin. It was a cargo hauler by design, with a deep pit in the center of the deck filled with snacked crates and barrels. A tarp could be rolled out to cover them in case of bad weather, but for now the cargo pit was exposed to the afternoon sun, leaving her free to watch the crew guiding the dock crane as it filled the hold. She was seated on a support strut running along the bottom of the airship, tucked against the hull and shaded by a tethered balloon. She took the last bite out of a peach before cocking her foreleg back and chucking the remains off into the waters far, far below. After tailing the sailors back to their ship, she had spent the last couple hours watching from on high. The constant air traffic of Straterra made her perch an excellent observation point. With the exception of the gifted, and those who often worked with them, ponies rarely thought to look up. She needed to find out where that ship was going. There were a few possible approaches. She could eavesdrop on the crew, but that would risk tipping off Kick and his gang. A smarter move would probably be to sneak into the Port Authority and check the manifests. She didn't think there were any gifted on the payroll, so it shouldn't be a difficult job. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sight of a mare with a ridiculously wide-brimmed pale pink hat stepping out onto the deck. The hat was so large that she couldn't see anything but the mare's swirling purple tail. A shockingly pink mare bounced out just a second later, all but confirming Anna's suspicions. Countess Rarity and Pinkie spent a couple minutes talking to some sailors before walking out onto the pier. They made for the town at a leisurely pace, smiling as they talked amongst themselves. Anna grimaced. There were bounty hunters looking for those mares right now in that very town, and they were waltzing through the streets without a care in the world. That was her target, her money walking through a minefield. She shifted her weight, letting herself fall. She closed her eyes for a few seconds, enjoying the feel of the wind tugging at her ears, before spreading her leathery wings out and pulling into a glide. No doubt a few curious eyes saw her descent, but from this distance she was just another gifted. A rare sight, but not one to comment on. She landed on the roof of a warehouse near the docks. The Countess and Pinkie hadn't seen her. The chatter of the crowd made it impossible to understand what they were saying, so Anna settled for shadowing them through the streets. If any other hunters tried anything, she'd be there to see, and if necessary, intervene. It was about 10 minutes later that a better idea came to her. Gauging their heading, Anna flew up ahead of them. She dropped down into an alley out of their sight, scooped up some dirt that had allocated in a pothole, and rubbed it onto her cheeks for maximum pity, and then settled into wait. Nobody spared her a single glance. It didn't take long for the shrill voice of Pinkie Pie to become clear from the surrounding drone.
Can we get something to eat, Rarity? I'm hungry, and those cupcakes look both scrumdiddly and umptious. We can eat in a bit, darling. I'm not setting one hoof on Altalucia without a proper wardrobe. Altalucia, huh?
It rang a bell. Anna knew it was a barren land of some description, but nothing more. Still, the name would be a great help for what came next. Doing her best impression of a shivering refugee, Anna stepped out into the street and turned towards the Countess's voice.
Rarity, watch out!
Anna let out a surprised grunt as she bumped into the Countess. She threw herself back and down, sprawling out onto the hard ground.
Ow! Oh, heavens!
The Countess gasped.
I'm so sorry!
Anna squinted up at the other mare, pretending to take a moment to recognize her.
What? Auntie Rarity? Auntie Pinkie? Oh, I remember you,
Pinkie said. She beamed as she helped Anna up.
You know Auntie Pinkie never forgets a face. Goodness, look at you.
Rarity grimaced as she pulled out a cloth to rub at the dirt smudged into Anna's cheeks.
Are you all right?
Anna pushed the invading hoof aside, making as if to step around the two.
Sorry for bumping into you, Auntie. I should have been watching where I was going. I insist that the blame is on me.
Rarity countered, stepping in her way.
Can we help you at all, darling? You look somewhat distressed.
Anna gave her a narrow smile. She let it drop quickly, as if it took a great deal of energy out of her.
I'm fine, Auntie, really. You've done enough already. I'm just worried about getting back home.
The two mares exchanged curious glances.
What about Captain Breezy?
Pinkie asked. A storm passed over Rarity's face. She leaned closer to Anna, her voice taking on a dangerous timbre.
Did she send you away? I swear as Celestia's my witness if that mare...
Anna raised her hooves, waving the anger away.
No, nothing like that. Really, Captain Breeze is great. It's just that I didn't want to go to Highton. I have family in Alta Lucia, and I just know they won't be able to sleep at nights until they see me again. Alta Lucia?
Rarity echoed.
Oh hey, that's where we're going.
Pinkie began to bounce in place, ignoring the looks drawn by the crowd.
You should ask Captain Meerkat for a ride.
She stopped bouncing as she sucked in a deep breath. Anna took a step back, wondering if the pink mare was in the midst of a sudden stroke.
We can be bug buddies!
It was exactly what she'd been hoping for, yet Anna frowned. There was a part of her which urgently whispered that no amount of money would be worth bunking with Pinkie Pie. She hushed that part of her. Gava was relying on her.
I don't know, Auntie Pinkie. I don't really have any money for a room.
The Countess let out a series of high-pitched titters.
Oh, don't you fret, dear. I'm certain the good captain won't mind an extra body. Pinkie and I can share a cabin, and you can have the other.
She smiled, tossing her mane.
Celestia knows that you'll appreciate having some privacy again.
Anna blinked. That had gone much smoother than expected. She'd barely even had to ask. She filed the thought away for later, plastering grateful relief all over her face.
Oh, thank you. Well, are you sure it isn't too much trouble? I wouldn't want to. Enough of that now. Goodness, I don't even think I know your name.
Rarity let out a soft chuckle.
Pardon me, Miss,
Anna opened her mouth to answer, only to find her name coming in the wrong voice.
Anna,
Pinkie said. She grinned at Anna. The grin was that of either a child excited at getting a question right, or a chess master playing the final move.
Isn't that right, Sleepy Bat? Yeah.
Anna forced a smile over her surprise.
I must have told her my name on the ambrosia. That has to be it. That's me. Well, Anna, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
The Countess dipped into a prim curtsy.
Now that that's settled, we simply must discuss your couture.
Anna drew a blank. The puzzlement on her face was perhaps the first genuine emotion she displayed throughout the entire conversation.
My what?
Pinkie blew a loud raspberry, squeezing her eyes shut exaggeratedly.
She's talking about clothes. She always uses those fancy schmancy words for clothes.
Rarity nodded as if it was obvious. Her giant hat bobbed with the motion.
Why don't we walk and talk, dears? The street isn't the best place for idle chatter, after all.
As if to prove her point, a pair of carts laden with goods rolled past, the clack and clatter of the wheels echoing off the surrounding buildings. The Countess started down the street with a precise step, and Pinkie followed with a snort and a giggle. Anna fell in beside them.
Auntie Rarity, I don't have a couture. And therein lies the problem, of course,
Rarity said. She scanned the signs of passing storefronts as they walked.
How could a lady of fashion such as myself ever to be expected to allow such an inspiring figure to go unadorned?
Anna cocked her head.
Is she coming on to me?
Rarity continued speaking, oblivious to her confusion.
The nocturnal grace, the feral stance, the dusky tones. I've always been inspired by the mysterious beauty of thestrals, you know, but you're the first I've had the chance to really look at up close.
She looked back at Anna with an eager smile.
You absolutely must let me make a dress for you. You want to make me a dress?
Anna asked.
But I don't have any bits. Or rather, I don't feel like going and taking someone else's bits for a new set of fancy clothes. The opportunity is payment enough,
Rarity insisted, turning her eyes back to the passing buildings.
I won't accept any argument on the matter. We're looking for new fabrics anyways. I need to expand my own wardrobe after all, you see.
She shot a sweet smile back towards Anna.
I hope you won't mind accompanying us. What are you playing at, Countess?
Anna had spent time around royalty before, and they were nearly worse than politicians when it came to forcing people into their greedy hooves. But Anna was the predator here, not the prey. She didn't plan on sticking around long enough to get pulled into this mare's plots. If all she had to do to get into her inner circle was accept a free dress, then she'd do it. Anna smiled back.
I'd love to, Auntie.